didn't actually think that transformations on itself could be a good build. Now don't get me wrong, transformations are very powerful, but I always saw them as extra cheap damage or extra damage that you would take away from a boss whenever that you need to take that extra damage, and that's a extra second life. I wouldn't never use them as a main means of killing bosses on itself per se. That is until I began toying with it a little bit, and so, well, the thing is that they are some kind of like weird, and they are not like that durable. There's not that much survivability that you can have while using transformations. That is to say, not all of them allow you to have that much survivability or defense, because they are clunky, and their frames for attacks and recovery frames, they are longer than the regular destined one are. That being said, there's one that's very, very powerful, which is the one that you're seeing on screen right now. Unfortunately, you don't get it until the 4th chapter of the game, and it's very difficult to get as well. There's a link in the video description on how to get it, but essentially you have to beat that boss fight to be able to get that transformation. Unfortunately as well, it is one of the most difficult, at least in my personal opinion, one of the most difficult bosses in the entirety of the game. It is one of the bosses that actually did make me struggle and rethink my options and trying to do a whole bunch of different things. It's a very, very difficult boss fight. However, it's very, very powerful. Essentially, what it does is that you have iframes for parrying attacks, and they're actually quite good. They are like essentially how this works ideally is that you attack, you have a combo, light attack combo, and the heavy finishers. If you use a heavy finisher as soon as the enemy is going to perform an attack on you, you're going to stagger the enemy, and it's essentially going to count as a parry. It's also going to inflict Thunder Blight, which is going to decrease the damage resistance that the enemy has, meaning that you'll be dealing more damage. What's the cool thing about this is that you might be thinking, well, I have to be relying on parries. Not necessarily, not that much, because the parry window in here, it's not as tight as you would have on, for example, a Souls game, where you have to be on point on when to counterattack. Essentially, just as soon as you see the enemy like do something, as you see that they are going to start the wind up of an attack, that's going to be more than enough for you to be able to pull off the parry. The window is huge, and I mean quite literally huge. And even then, if you don't actually manage to pull off the parry, as soon as you use that heavy attack, remember that it has to be chained on a light attack, it's going to stagger the enemy. It doesn't matter what kind of enemy are you fighting against, it's always going to stagger the enemy. And yes, this actually works at the final boss of the game, the final phase of the final boss of the game. You can basically stun lock him. Sometimes the enemy's health pool is just not going to be enough for your might to be able to finish the boss fight. But if you're basically doing light, heavy, light, heavy, light, heavy, depending on the situation and how fast is the enemy is going to be attacking you, it's just monstrous. It's just really, really powerful. So the build is very simple. You're going to need to spend a pointy in Lightning Flash right here, and then max out your points for your transformation skill tree right here. One thing that they are very expensive, at least these three right here, they cost just one, but Ferocious Form, Enduring Form, and Might Reserve, they actually cost a little bit more. This build revolves around killing things as fast as possible before you run out of might, and that's more often than not that's going to be the case. However, sometimes the health pool of the boss is just going to be huge, and you're not going to be able to do so. So you do want to have a little bit of sustainability when it comes to extra skills for you to be able to be sufficient enough to be able to fight against the enemy once you de-transform. Remember that you're still going to have your spells, you're still going to have the extra tools that you're going to have, but you do want to have extra little points. Spending all of your points right here, it's going to take you like 50 points. And then if you're using it for the specific transformation that I'm using it, which is the Lightning Flash long right here, then you should be at the 4th chapter of the game, which means that you should be around level 75. And you want to, if you want to have extra little points, feel free to take this off, the Might Reserve. The Might Reserve, it's not really that amazing. It's just, it allows you to retain a little bit of might to when you are de-transforming, which is not going to be that useful. Ideally, what you want to be doing at all times is be transformed as much as possible for the entirety of the fight. This could, for example, be useful while exploration, but in exploration there's like really nothing that is going to be dangerous enough for you to have to rely solely on your transformation, so there's that. The second thing that you're going to need as a sustainability is always going to be, of course, your staff stance. Remember that your stance is going to be the main means of damage in the entirety of the game, so this is going to be your main sustainability. That is the focus in here. You're spending your points on your transformation right here, and then focus on your staff stances. The rest of everything, if you want to have extra little something, it's going to be dependent onto you. So for example, spending some points into Immobilize, it's actually not that expensive. As a matter of fact, you don't really need that many points to max out this guy right here. As a matter of fact, you need like 12 points, which is not that much on itself. But my advice is, of course, is that you focus, since you're not going to be like establishing a build per se, because you have spent all of your points in your transformation, then might as well, while you are leveling up, I am a level 100, so I have a lot of points in here, then place your points into stamina, martial arts, or anything. Like, it just depends on to you, the tools that you want to have. Just have in mind that 50 points are required for your transformation, and then the staff stance, I think personally that it is a must. And what do you know, as for gear, there's actually, the weapon doesn't really matter that much, it's not going to be that consequential. However, the armor, you should have the non-pure armor of Coiling Long. Essentially, what this does is that it increases your might recovery, it focuses everything on might. So yeah, this is perfect for this build. This armor set was tailored for this build. So when you are de-transforming, you are modded, and you're going to have a damage reduction, and whenever you are modded or standing in mod, is going to increase the recovery rate of your might. So this is the perfect armor set, and you need the entirety of this thing right here. I think that you get it at the end of chapter 4, I believe. If not, it should be like closing to the end of chapter 4 right here. And yeah, I think that it's at the end of closing the end of chapter 4. So yeah, this is what you're going to be using for armor. The curios are really nothing that special. Depending on your needs, you're going to be using your curio. So for example, if you leveled up the Immobilize, you can be using a Immobilize curio right here, or that was actually the soak. Anyways, I'm focusing right here on pure melee, which increased my critical hit chance right here. So yeah, that's what I'm doing, but feel free to toy around with this. I personally haven't found any soaks that would increase my prowess with the transformations. However, the Bee Mountain Stone, it's very useful because sometimes it allows you not to consume a gourd, so that's extra usages right there. And then there's the one that increases your iframes whenever you're dodging, and you do want to have a little bit of more survivability whenever you're not transformed. For my spirit, I have the Gore Eye Daoist. Remember that this actually increases your attack power by a substantial amount, and before you transform, you can actually cast this guy into the boss fight and then continue with the transformation for the rest of the duration of the boss fight. A lot of people actually always asks about my relics. I don't think that these guys are that important, although the one advice that I would like to give you when it comes to relics is that always use something that is going to be more universal, because I like to change builds depending on the situation. I like to play, alter my playstyles, and there's some relics in here that compel for you to use a specifically something. So for example, this one, it's a little bit more universal. I would say that Opportune Watcher and then Keen Insights, those are the ones that would be more universal. I wouldn't advise for you to take the one for Unveiling Strike, because I'm not going to be using Unveiling Strike at all times. However, these two guys right here, regardless of build, are going to be useful. The same happens in here. For example, increasing my attack power after a perfect dodge. That's actually very universal, as well as the invincibility of the first move of the varied combos. That's a good option as well, but I wouldn't take, for example, Sound as a Bell, because it relies on purely using Rock Solid, and maybe I'm playing with a build that doesn't use rock solid. So there's that. Always choose something that should feel a little bit more universal and that would work for all of your builds that you're using. It is a very powerful build, because not only do you have like a second extra life, your first second life, it's a monstrous machine of staggering the enemy, that it can solo bosses, like you can quite literally finish entire boss fights just by using this guy. And if you didn't actually kill the boss fight, once you finally finish the transformation, you're still going to have all of your gourds, you're still going to have lots of windows for you to punish the boss, and just the stagger potential on this guy, and just the fact that it's just so easy to use, it's just monstrous, dude. It's monstrous. Anyways, if you like the content, so like and super appreciate it. Also, you today you go use a beautiful person, you didn't go use a beautiful person, subscribe to the channel, join the Discord, have a beautiful day, goodbye.